Hello, everyone. Welcome to our January Library Sciences webinar. I apologize that it's slightly delayed. I had some technical difficulties, but we are rolling with it. Today's topic is all about virtual career fairs and how to connect with recruiters. With that in mind, I want to share my screen so you all can see what is coming up. We have our GLAM event, which is a great opportunity to land different internships and career opportunities within the fields of library science and information science. There's about 19 library programs that participate in it, and there are several events, which is why we want to gear you all up for it. The actual virtual career fair is on February 28th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. I would highly encourage you all to attend. And if you go to the GLAM website, you can see all of the different organizations that are participating in it. We also have a couple of different student prep sessions besides just today's. Ours is geared for our UK students. But if for some reason you think about something later and you're like, oh, I just want a little bit of additional help, you can always attend one of the prep sessions on either February 14th or 24th, as well as there are a couple of different career exploration panels. I would highly encourage you all to attend these and just see, okay, maybe I'm interested in XYZ, but it's just a great opportunity to look at all of the different industries. I am going to let our panelists introduce themselves. Again, all of them have either been on the side of attending these as a student looking for an opportunity or as an employer who is looking for students and opportunities. So just hoping they can give us some great insight. I will let Courtney, can you lead us in introductions, please?
Sure, I'm happy to do it. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. My name is Courtney Talby, and I am the head of the Interlibrary Loan and Document Delivery Service at the University of Kentucky Libraries.
Thank you. Cindy, can you go next, please?
Sure. I'm Cindy Bleiberg, and my most recent position, I'm retired now. My most recent position was also with the University of Kentucky Libraries, where I was the head of the team that did all the development for the various library websites.
Perfect. Thank you. Andrew.
Hello, I'm Andrew McDonald. I'm currently the digital archivist for the University of Kentucky Libraries Special Collections Research Center. And I'm relatively new to the field, so I switched careers about 3 years ago. So I actually just finished library school 3 years ago at the University of Wisconsin. So attended job fairs and had practicums and internships and all the stuff that a lot of you are doing and looking to do now.
I love it. Thank you all. Okay, my first question. What are some tips you would suggest if this is their first career fair ever? So not even if this is their first virtual career fair, but how does one prep for a career fair? And not all of you have to answer every question.
Well, that's a good question. And I guess the very first career fair I went to, I actually spent a lot of time just reading about which employers and recruiters and organizations were going to be there and try to not treat it as a this is going to be where I do 20 job interviews, but more like this is where I have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and learn a lot in kind of a low stakes, environment before you are getting to that stage where you're really doing the interviews. So as much as anything, I think your first career fair is to get to know the organizations, the people there to the best extent, and kind of like look for the opportunities right off the bat that you're thinking, or the organizations and opportunities that fit what you're thinking about right now, and treat it as a learning experience.
I would also say, don't limit yourself to one type of library or one type of job that you feel that your degree would fit into. You know, the library field is really, really wide ranging from academic libraries that you're already familiar with, maybe public libraries that everyone's familiar with, but also corporate libraries and library vendors, museums, archives, lots of different things. So just take a look and see which things sort of feel right, as it were, and think about, you know, like the size of the organization and stuff, and really do your homework, like Andrew was saying.
And
Yeah,
oh,
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead, Courtney.
I was just gonna say, I was just kind of gonna echo what Cindy said. And I really liked when you just shared your screen, it even has the categories they can pursue, like alternates, turn of careers in the library science field or government. So I
Yes.
think that's really exciting to be able to pursue it, at least learn more about it and see if it would be a good fit. Because I know in library school, I couldn't take all the classes offered. So, there's things I just only have broad understanding of. So that's great that they're doing that.
I I know that all of you kind of touched on doing your research. Is there a way, my brain immediately went to doing a literature review and trying to get some type of matrix to keep everything organized? Is there a system you all utilize to help you understand, okay, these are the 5 employers I really want to meet with, and these are this is key information about this employer. How do you go about researching it? I know they can obviously see the employers on Handshake, but what are some strategies to get to know the different either libraries or museums or opportunities that are at the fair?
I'll talk first again. I I think that's a good question, and I think that the answer, it's like our favorite answer in archives is it depends on kind of your comfort level and your organization style as much as anything. So I think for some people, matrices, as you had mentioned, could be very helpful as a way of like organizing the sheer quantity of information that you're kind of confronted with when you go to a virtual job fair, because there are, sometimes enormous schedules and so many different people. And the thought of, if you just look at it, the face of it, and don't winnow down for yourself what you'd like to focus on, it feels overwhelming to the point of pointlessness to a degree. So I think for some people that could be really helpful to kind of like construct a grid of who you're most interested in. The job search, as it relates to a virtual job fair like this too, can have a degree of intrusiveness. The idea that you're going to then, like you see that, let's say a librarian from this institution is presenting at 2 p.m. Uh, within this context, it's within the pale of things to actually like look at their LinkedIn page, look at their institutional page. Sometimes you'll find their CV and look at what their background is prior to reaching this point in their careers. That helps inform your questions and kind of, to some extent, looking at other people's CVs too is an opportunity in itself to kind of like see for yourself not just other people's paths, but the different sorts of opportunities that lead to a path that you might want to pursue. So again, I know I'm just saying research over and over again, but I think like for me that was my approach, was to like learn as much as possible about to focus on the things I was most interested in. So I didn't get a matrix involved, but I did have a Google Doc and a spreadsheet. Okay, that is a matrix. So yeah, I guess matrix. But I think it really depends on your learning style, your organizational style, and whatever allows you to focus your energy for something like this, I think is really helpful.
Anything else? I will echo what Andrew said, just being the general career coordinator for CI. I do think a matrix is helpful, especially in instances like this one of just staying really, really organized and focused. And I think it's also wonderful if you had a column that is a debrief section. So after the fair, I know in the moment, it's like, oh, I had this amazing, wonderful conversation with this librarian at this library. And you think, oh, I don't need to write that down. I'll remember that. But trust me, there's a lot of different organizations at the fair, and it does get sometimes slightly overwhelming. So I would say that I think they all had great advice about research before, but I think even adding a little column after, so just saying different things of what you discussed could potentially be beneficial. I know that, Andrew, you touched on CVs, which leads me nicely into the next question. What are different sections or maybe items that students typically fail to include on their CVs, but really should?
One thing I would say is, look at if you have past work experience, internships, whatever. If you, particularly if you are going to be switching careers, think about how to represent your past experience so that you're highlighting the skills that would be useful in a library career or that would be useful in the types of jobs that you're seeking. Don't undersell yourself just because the place that you worked for or the field that you were in previously was not directly related.
Love that. Cindy, can you talk about potentially how students can prepare to talk about different experiences that maybe aren't seen immediately as directly related to a library science career, but how to maybe give them a little bit of confidence or ways to make those connections a little better and a little easier?
That's a good question. I think thinking about, I'm assuming that folks that are attending these things are have already had some coursework experience and thinking about skills that they might have or subject areas that they've been involved in that sort of resonate with things that they've learned and that um, jibe with some skills that they might have that they've learned about in a class. For example, if you've worked in an industry that is a particular subject, if you've worked as an engineer or you did an internship um, in a school or something, think about how a library organization might fit in with the the subject matter or the organization and think how you can connect yourself there. And don't be shy, don't be shy about highlighting skills that you think will resonate or catch the eye of other folks. They're interviewing you, but you're also putting yourself out there and highlighting the best things about yourself. So don't be shy.
I'd
Thank you,
echo
Cindy.
that too. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, especially depending on where you are in your education or your career, you might feel like you don't have enough relevant library experience to list, but there's a lot of crossover. So if you've ever managed a social media account for a club or an organization of any sort, like that is a qualification that a lot of people are looking for, and it demonstrates both responsibility and an ability to use technical tools. And it's something that a lot of librarians don't want to do. So maybe if that ends up some element of your job. If you've done writing of any sort, it doesn't have to be about libraries, but if you can link out to a newspaper article that you wrote that you think demonstrates quality work, or a video that you've produced, you might take for granted the fact that that's something that lots of people know how to do, but it isn't. If you also have taught anybody anything and you want to demonstrate your ability to educate colleagues or in some cases supervisors on how to do something like training is a practical tool that is applicable across so many types of library careers. So I think there's a lot of those types of things that we take for granted as not being relevant to the sorts of jobs you want, but they very much are. So I think making sure that those are included it's important.
And any sort of customer service or any sort of public facing things that you've done, that's good too.
Yeah, I would jump in on that because I was going to say a lot of times you might mention you have customer service experience, but if you can tie it in more relevant to the job, like you worked in this job more one-on-one with a customer versus if you did something that, you were working with a lot of customers at once, or, like Andrew mentioned, may have been more instructional or fit into the specific job you're interested in. Kind of giving more of that detail can be helpful if you can. So,
I know you all can't see it, but I am smiling. I'm so happy with that answer. I know that sometimes, especially if it's a first career fair, it can feel a little overwhelming and potentially there's some imposter syndrome going on. But I'm really happy all three of you touched on different things, and especially clubs and organizations that our students are in and the roles that they play in those, and just kind of highlighting all of the wonderful work they're doing inside and outside the classroom. So thank you. I love it. Okay. What should they have? Because I know we talked a little bit about the CV. Is there anything else, any other materials that they should have ready to go for the event, especially because it's in a virtual environment? So it's kind of sky's the limit of getting to have potentially other samples of things. What would be good to have on deck?
this is kind of loosely related, but for me, I would go ahead and kind of write down any questions that I may have. So when I'm on, you have the time for any on the spot questions that come to your mind, but you won't forget something if there was something specific you wanted to know more about.
Yeah, I think if you have links to any external work that you can point to, if you're technically minded and you have a GitHub repository, you definitely want to be able to push that to somebody at the drop of a hat. Likewise, if you have a website that you participated in or videos you've produced, you could drop a link, in the middle of a conversation in a chat, those sorts of things. I think those are good things to have ready to go.
Brittany, you kind of touched on it a little bit, and it's a good segue. What are some good questions students can ask to stand out in a positive way, and or questions that students might not think to ask?
I love this question because this is kind of one of my favorite kind of just hiring tips in general is to come to interviews or virtual fairs with questions in mind, because that does, I think, can make you stand out if you're asking thoughtful questions, and whether it be about you just want to learn more about the organization or maybe goals they have in mind for this position or things like that. Or questions from the job description specifically that you would like more information on. I think those are, this is a good time to both ask those questions and kind of get your mind thinking about for when if you do decide you want to apply for a particular position, you'll kind of have those thoughts in mind.
And as an employer, speaking from the employer perspective, I think questions that candidates ask um, related to the job, particularly if it's a technical position that you're interviewing for. If you take a look at the offerings that they have, as far as if you're specifically looking at a development job, not only have that GitHub information handy, but ask about what sort of technical infrastructure is there, and what challenges have they faced or are they facing? Things like what and how much collaboration is the position expected to do, either department to department, or if there are particular individuals in other departments that are going to be key to a position that they might be interested in. There's one more thing I was going to add, but I think it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. I'm sure I'll think of it, but
Yeah, I'd echo all of those, and especially the closer you can tailor your question to the employer or the industry in a way that demonstrates you've done research about them, and that type of work. The more specific you can get, the better. But it's not always an option, especially if you have that many going on at one time. But the more of that you can, you're not just asking a question, you're also demonstrating something about yourself along the way. So I think that's a helpful thing to keep in mind too.
And I've noticed over the last few years that less and less information about organizations is online, sort of their internal workings and organizational structure and stuff. So how things are organized and how positions, the lines that positions report up through, is not always available on the website. So those are good questions to kind of get a sense of how the organization operates.
Thank y'all. Okay, this is about virtual in general, because I know we've had some really good advice for any type of interview. What are common pitfalls you notice in a virtual setting?
So I just unmuted. That's one thing that I've seen people do is not just like stop unmuting yourself, but like leave yourself unmuted for far too long and bring in the cacophony of your life. Um, I actually moved to my house for this particular call and I'll head back to work, but I blurred my background to hide, you'll never know. So so the system works. And I've also seen, I think it makes you feel like you're training to be a news broadcaster, but there is a degree of where do you look when you're on a Zoom call? Do you, some people look at themselves, some people look at the image of the person who they're talking to, and some people speak directly to the camera. So it's sounds random, but practicing a little bit and seeing which, even like pre-recording yourself a little bit to see what looks the most natural is not a bad idea. And even thinking about lighting and audio headsets, if you have access to something like that, or I don't know, actually, I'm kind of curious what other people think would be smarter to do, to rely on internal microphones on your laptops, but all these like little things that turn you into kind of like a television producer for yourself, or it's worth asking yourself, how do you present yourself with your backdrop? It used to be just, you know, for me, like, well, what kind of tie will I wear? Or, it doesn't even matter if I'm wearing shoes. You'll never know, but you will look behind me and see my David Lynch Dune poster behind me, and you'll have questions. And that might be good. You might want to present that version of yourself, but thinking of the backdrop as much as anything actually can be kind of like important for this sort of thing.
And having a quiet space, not only thinking about the visuals that you're sending, but making sure that you aren't going to have any distractions for yourself. People, phones ringing, garbage trucks going by, people running through the space. Just sort of be thoughtful about how you can take care of yourself. Have some water on hand. I think is always good, personally speaking.
Only thing I'm going to add, because you guys all had excellent ones, be careful about blending into your background. That is something just in a virtual environment that can be slightly difficult, and it's an easily manageable and fixable solution. So that's the only one, but everything else I think is great. And I would say also just being flexible. Like today, I've never had a problem with my camera, and I mean ever. And I was laughing so hard with Stacy before everyone got on because I was like, of course, the one time. So just giving yourself grace, and I'm sure that recruiters can do the same as well. Okay. When,
I have one
oh,
anecdote actually for this. So the job that I currently have at the University of Kentucky started off with a video call, but with the cameras off, and I was really grateful because I did it at a recording sound booth in a journalism library where I worked, but the lights were on a sensor. And so I was in this booth, and because nobody had moved in 10 minutes, the lights went off. And I had a if I'd tried to go anywhere, I'd have like tripped and hurt myself. But all they would have seen was like me just disappearing into a shadowy depth. So yeah, planning out your space and testing your cameras when you can is helpful.
I love that. What about elevator pitches? Because I know sometimes it's a little bit difficult in a virtual environment, but usually, and for if anyone on the call is confused about what I am referring to, is the typical of, so tell me about yourself, or right after you get past kind of that small talk chit chat about the weather or where are you located, then it gets into, okay, who are you? So what are components that students should include within their elevator pitch so that they don't potentially get nervous and either ramble or cut themselves off without including details that they really should have?
Some things that come to mind for me are just kind of maybe a quick overview, like just have a few sentences about your background, and then maybe your interest either in this position or in that area, librarianship or whatever the area might be. So you at least have like a few sentences down that, so if you need to read it, if you get nervous on the spot, or just it's something short enough you could remember, you could do that. And then if you need to expand further, you could based on, the interactions with the recruiter. But I think just kind of having kind of just a quick snapshot of those things would be a good start.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I'd leave it at bullet points instead of, I'd compose it in advance. But if you look like you're reading, that's probably going to like undermine your elevator pitch to a certain degree. So I agree. Having like um, a list of the few things you're sure you want to get in there, whether that's make sure you have a couple references to practical experience that are relevant and your background, your education, those types of things. But making sure that you kind of do it in a way that still seems natural, as if you are saying them rather than reading them.
And I think Courtney touched on this, but if you could say at least a sentence or two about larger things that you're interested in, um, that maybe a path, if you know what it is, a path that you might want to go down as far as librarianship goes. Highlight, being enthusiastic about, I'm really excited about, this sort of working in this sort of a library or this sort of a department or connecting this experience to future experience, that sort of thing.
Okay, I promise this is my last question, and then I'll open the floor if anyone else has any. When/how should students follow up post the virtual event?
I'll just touch on this, I think there's probably depends on the student. If they just wanted to send a quick note, like it was nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. That's always nice, but I think that's actually a good question to ask the recruiter, like what are the next steps? How are these things handled? Because depending on the organization, it may be, even if they're the supervisor of the position, it's completely handled by their organization's HR. So they won't even know necessarily details or can't share details. So I think that's kind of a good general question to ask, like next steps, if you are interested in applying for this position and kind of getting timelines. So then, and asking that too, like, is it okay to contact you for more questions? And they probably hopefully mention that anyway in their talk, but if they don't, just to ask that and to see the way you should pursue if you do want to reach out.
Yeah, I can't claim to be an expert on this aspect either, but and I think the more you can tailor it, like Courtney said, to the individual and the experience that you had talking to them, I think that makes a lot of sense. And if you can ask them, ideal. And if you don't get to that, then I feel like the next day an email, thanking them for their time, that sort of thing might be not inappropriate. And I think that's the right medium to respond.
Fantastic. Does anyone on the call have any questions? You're also welcome to put them in the chat and I can always read them too.
Just a quick comment about the types of jobs that you might be applying for. I've worked in industry for a couple of different vendors, and it was really weird to me that you just send in your resume, you include your LinkedIn, and you don't have to do any sort of cover letter. And as someone who's worked in an academic library before, the cover letter is very, very important. But just to understand that the materials that you may have to submit could be different for different types of jobs.
Okay, if we don't have any questions, any final pieces of advice? Cindy, I loved what you just added, and I didn't even think to ask that, so that was wonderful. Anything maybe that we just haven't touched on?
If there's somewhere you really, really want to work, it's not a bad thing. If there's not a virtual way to get in touch with them, if there's someone that's just not in the career fairs, a lot of places will just have an email address, jobs at whatever, and you can express interest that way. And sometimes people really look for people who would be a good fit with experience or whatever, that they may have something coming up. It's never a bad idea to just kind of get your name out there outside of the career fairs as well, whether it's networking in an organization or just sort of reaching out as you have the opportunity.
Okay. Is there a best way for anyone that would want to contact any of you three? Is it LinkedIn or email, just in case maybe they have follow-up questions? I know I said my last question was the last one, but I guess that was my actual last question of if they wanted to contact you post this and potentially ask a question. Is there an email address or LinkedIn? How should they go about it?
For me, email is the easiest, and it's mine's easy. It's my last name at uky.edu, but you're welcome to share this wherever it gets posted if you'd like as well.
I think LinkedIn is probably easiest for me, since I'm not affiliated with an institution anymore, and have email addresses that may change or whatever. That's probably the best way.
Email is fine for me, or I'm hoping Stacy doesn't mind. I know she's the primary contact for the library school, so I'm sure if you wanted to email her and something to me or one of us, she'd happily forward it to us if that's easier for you to remember. You probably have all worked with her or met her at some point.
Perfect. Thank you all. This was a great webinar to kick off the entire year. I can't believe it's already 2025. Don't forget, GLAM, the actual virtual career fair, is on February 28th. So as of today, a little less than a month out until the fair. And thank you so much for being here. Bye, y'all.